Hey, Sankashan.
You have decided to attend this one as well.
I did, yes. So you were in the last one, yeah? Oh,
I
yeah,
was.
of course you were. Yes. Yeah, I did. I mean, if it's just you and me and Drummond, we can ask him lots of questions.
Let me just check with Drama that he's joining. Well, I see that he's online. I'm guessing he's going to play. I'll give him a message.
Well, there's our dedicated double dippers.
I was going to say, if it's only the same crew again, we could potentially save ourselves the meeting.
Well, that, as you've probably seen, Joe, that does happen with this meeting frequently. It's just, the current weighting of participants, versus geographies. But, you know,
Yeah.
that is what it is. And I'm also always happy to use this time to dive deeper on any particular topic that you or Sankarshan. And man, talk about diving deep. Sankarshan is, I don't know whether he's like plugged AI straight into his brain or what exactly he's doing to crank out, these brilliant essays one after another. So Sankarshan, I just figured it out. He discovered cocaine or
The
something
AIs
like
are
that.
listen the AIs are listening, Drummond. So have to be careful what you say.
I know this is being recorded. That's why it's a very intentionally for the recording, a joke. I have no idea how Sankarshan does it, but I also notice he's not reacting right now. He might have sent his bot
He,
to
uh,
listen in.
No, no, no. He and I were chatting 1 second ago. He's probably talking, but he's got him on mute. I've actually got one of his posts on my other screen here. I want to ask him. I'm trying to navigate through to where I want to be. Um,
And I think I've got his latest on a tab that I haven't read yet because I have only enough, so much bandwidth to get through all of
yeah.
Sankarshan's posts.
I'm actually amazed
Oh, here
that
he
so
is.
many folks are actually reading through all of what I write, primarily because I write for myself and just essentially get my thoughts in a straight line. But I am happy about the feedback.
Turning credential. Okay, so I also like the fact I'm on the Wait a minute, where's the link to? Oh, I see. Portable eligibility is 3 different essays now. From identity, eligibility, infrastructure. Oh, yeah, that's right. This is a 3-parter, which means well, it's almost a little book all by itself. Holy moly. Yes.
That one was a cheat actually. I tried to make it 3 distinct posts and then I realized I cannot make it. So I said like, okay, what the heck? I'll write it in one single shot and then everyone can take their time and figure out how to do it.
This is fascinating. There's just a ton of schema design and market grammar. Wow. There's a
So
lot to take in here. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask you, Ramon, about this the outcome from the workshop, in-person workshop that you facilitated and Marcus and others attended.
Yes.
What is going to result from the end of it? It's essentially we see a spec that allows folks to build VTAs or the entire VTA interaction, or is it also the how the VTA ecosystem is supposed to shape up and behave? How far are you going to push it?
That's an absolutely great question. So let me suggest that even it's just the 3 of us, because these meetings are auto-recorded, let's say this is an official meeting. And I will just quickly get it started in our standard way, because it is such. And then that's a perfect question to dive into. Because especially with the 2 of you, or anyone who's interested, I love diving deeper into these topics, and I think it's well worth it. So for the recording, we will just say please ignore anything before this because the meeting is just starting officially right now, and I'm getting up my chat windows here. And so welcome to the APAC edition of the February 4th Decentralized Trust Graph Meeting Working Group, at which we always show our antitrust policy notice first. I will note for the record that the attendees all attended this morning's Americas and EU meeting. But that doesn't matter because we're just so hooked on these topics. We've got to continue talking about them, and we will do that. Okay, so I'm just going to see Joe Rasmus. Yes, everyone has names here. Whoops. Sankershan. I should have an extra one. And Atraman. Okay, cool. All right. And because we were all on this morning's meeting, just again for the recording, we're not going to go over all that. We're going to dive deeper into a question that Sankershan, you just asked on this topic our main topic we had this morning, architecture of verifiable trust agents, and that particularly referred to the second of these 2 diagrams. Well, this is the first one that just positions the overall place we mostly were talking about the personal verifiable trust agent, as opposed to the community verifiable trust agent. Again, for both of you, what I shared this morning, it was really, I'll say more about it on this. It was a 4-day workshop, and some people were only there for the first 2 days, but still the sort of the most of the core folks contributing on the technical and developer side were there for the 4 days. With all of that and all of the sharing, it wasn't until the morning of the 3rd day that it came out that there was this disconnect between folks, the way they envision the community verifiable trust agent, which is really sort of like, well, you have to have something like that if you're going to have a community of any size, because you can't really run one of those at the edge, right? You got to have it in the cloud. But there were some folks there that really saw individuals as just connecting into communities and then forming relationships there and sharing messages and data and all that stuff, and then just selecting the set of communities, but really only having edge agents themselves. And there was another contingent of us that were like, well, yeah, it could work that way, but here's all the reasons that you'd actually want to have personal verifiable trust agents in the cloud. And so once we got into that discussion, which took like 2 hours, we had this real, and it was a classic terminology thing, because some of us using the term agent or verifiable trust agent were referring to this architecture, and others were referring to just thinking it was only communities that had them. So once this came out, the whole group undertook on the afternoon of actually the second part of the morning of the first day. Once that was clear, it took us literally 2 hours to realize this, classic terminology mismatch. I literally pulled up this picture in order to get us on the same page. And at that point, folks understood why we were using the term verifiable trust agent, not just any agent, not just the AI agent, not just regular agent, verifiable trust agent, and why we were distinguishing between those at the edge and those in the cloud and their capabilities. Once that was clear, and again, it took 2 hours with a set of folks that have come together into this workshop, right, that are all in this space, and most of them active contributors in this working group. 2 hours just to get to that. Then the next 2 hours was just saying, okay, if this animal exists, what does the architecture look like? And that was the second picture that we went over. And again, you have the set of basically, think of it, modular services and here's the thing is, I don't think in the end you actually distinguish that much between a personal VTA and a VTC VTA, right? They both need this general architecture. The big difference is that a personal VTA has one person and their set of devices that are, managing it and using it. And a community VTA has a whole bunch, whatever the size of the community is. Plus, it almost certainly, for any community that scales, has other VTAs that it is coordinating, right? You're nesting or you're interconnecting. So there are differences in capabilities, but the general architecture of edge agents talking to a cloud agent isn't really different, which is why you see the CNM community network manager capability over here. And the idea of the PNM, the personal network manager, that's been part of our thinking from the outset. The evolutionary step we got to was, oh, well, you need a way to manage, like especially set up and configure one of these things when you start. But at that point, as you start pairing apps with your VTA, and I love that concept, that if you get a new app that actually supports all this, you pair it once, just like you'd pair a new Bluetooth device. I mean, it's not the same thing, but it's logically the same thing. You pair it once with that, which is really the exchange of, guess what, verifiable relationship credential. That app becomes a member of your personal trust network. But it's an app whose functionality essentially is now a VTA on your own subnetwork that you have enrolled, and you can unenroll, right? You can say, nope, that app is, and now, and it's, that connection is literally a set of DIDs or exchange with that app. And now it's something you can manage here and you can manage at the other side. But you don't have to have a personal network manager capability. You could have just a set of apps on a particular device. As long as you have that personal network manager capability someplace. This one is intended to be just a web interface to your personal VTA in this diagram, right? This just and then we wanted to do that because I think now I'm going to give a very long answer to your question, Sankarshan. So two things are going on in parallel here. One is, what specs do we need out of the DTWG, right? DTGWG, out of this working group. And then what open source code needs to be developed to have at least a reference implementation of those specs. And as I think, both of you know, that is the reason that could be an open source project at any place. Of course, it could be at LF Decentralized Trust. But for various reasons, and some of the code almost certainly will be, whether it's at LFDT or it's at Open Wallet Foundation, wherever those code components are. One of the goals of the first person cooperatives is to say, hey, we're building a cooperative to help steward such a code base and make sure that it will meet the requirements, not just DTG standards, but first-person network governance requirements, right? So we can, for instance, say, hey, this particular VTA implementation doesn't leak. It meets our privacy requirements, it meets our security requirements. It is a first-person certified VTA and a first-person certified PNM that you can run on a local app. That governance of a network that uses the decentralized trust graph is the reason that the first-person cooperative was formed. And we came out of the workshop saying, and governance of open source reference components to implement that is also something we're putting a stake in the ground that we need to do. That's a very long answer to your question, Sankarshan. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I think it is. I think my perspective to this comes from two places. One is to be able to understand that when the specs are being drawn up and they're debated, how far are we going to think about in terms of establishing boundaries for where these VTAs would be operating, the legitimacy of all of that. Capabilities like delegation and being able to get discovered and the usual stuff that relates to services being in a software system. That's one part. The other part is it is not probably unreasonable to think that when this becomes consumer grade, there's going to be a lot more folks trying to create VTAs for other people as off the shelf, like adopt our VTA and do this. And there's an upside and there's a downside to. The upside is that there's a lot more faster adoption with less initial outlay of capital. The downside is that a similar experiment in the digital wallet ecosystem has actually led to kind of a lot of the wallets dying on the vine, with consolidation happening into a few wallets. So I think we might want to keep in perspective all of this real stuff that has happened in the past 3 years while we are creating this ecosystem and being able to land it at consumer grade, because this is going to be consumer grade. This is not just enterprise grade, and consumer grade systems have to be way more fault tolerant than we imagined them to. And that's essentially the backstory of why I asked, how are you going to push this? And now there's a follow-up question, which is, where are these specs discussions happening? Is it like you have separate task forces and meetings that I should be looking into, or is it follow them on GitHub?
So it's super good question. That workshop was something that the first person cooperative wanted to put together. We'd had it sort of in mind for a while to prepare essentially for the meeting or the conference I keep mentioning on February 23rd, the Summit for Human Agent, Summit on Human Agency, H2H Summit on Human Agency. And what triggered it was that one of the key contributors, which ironically they only occasionally attend the DTG meetings, that's Affinity, because they're Singapore based, and of course they could attend this meeting more, but essentially others of us that are working with them are their proxies in this work, and we talked about that at the you've seen Glenn Gore in one meeting, he's the CEO. I think we've seen Adam Lardner, the CTO, on one or two meetings, but they're very happy with what we're doing. And I think the short answer is they since they're following it closely, if they have any feedback, we're going to get it. Otherwise, they want us to just keep going. So anyway, what I'm explaining is that workshop was really about getting sort of some technical alignment. Now, the other thing I mentioned, and we talked about, Jeff Turk, who you see on all the calls and co-chairs the credentials task force, is working very closely with them, specifically with Glenn Gore, on the Linux kernel maintainer verification project, which is implementing exactly, as we've, for instance, gone through the 3 versions of the DTG credential schemas, they literally have been coding to each one, right? And as soon as we put out a new one, within a day or two, they've upgraded to that. So this is working in parallel. Now, I'm explaining all that to say we're going to have some folks in Seattle. I'm based in Seattle, and so we sort of said, and we had a couple of our folks working at First Person Cooperative who said, okay, well, let's come up and have this meeting. And then it did grow somewhat once we say we were going to do it. So that's why it ended up being a very productive workshop. There is sort of a church and state here thing. DTG is tackling the specs. First Person Project and First Person Cooperative is saying, okay, we're building a network based on those specs. We're going to be, of course, that's the whole thing. Governance of that network is up. That's out of scope for DTWG, right? But anyone who's involved in this work, who wants to be involved in First Person Cooperative, and that work is welcome. It's that's why it's a cooperative. It's open. It's all good stuff. One thing that I can say right now is we don't have the bandwidth. The First Person Cooperative team doesn't have the bandwidth to have a whole separate parallel set of discussions. I mean, that one workshop was already a huge undertaking just to get everyone on that one. So we discussed there. The main thing I think that's getting to what you're after is the open source code. What came out of the workshop was a plan among the folks that were in the room, and they said, hey, look, there are going to be a bunch of folks that are not in the room that are interested in this. Essentially a plan for the open source code modules would be necessary to support this picture, right? Which means a VTA that can definitely serve individuals, but also has the core capabilities for a community. A plan for that open source code is what their final deliverable was at the end of the day on Friday. That group, like I said, I think there were 6 different either people or groups like Affinity at the table that were agreeing to that. They're dividing up the work of documenting that, and there is already one repo. I think it's firstperson.network. It's in there. It's I can find out the name for it, but the other thing coming out is, okay, where are the repos going to be? Because some already exist, and new ones need to be developed. And once those repos are there, first person related discussions can happen there, and discussions and issues. And when, to the extent it's helpful and we have the bandwidth, we will start having meetings or gatherings for anyone interested in that, outside of just, and that will be on that side of the fence, and DTG will keep rocking down this side of the fence. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think once the repository of artifacts gets sorted out, I remember I checked out the firstperson.network site probably earlier this week, thinking there was a link to some GitHub org or a GitHub presence. It wasn't there. And hence, so I'm guessing that at some point, that's going to come up, and that should allow me to follow along and participate, because I'm pretty aware of the time zone issues and challenges, and Joe is even more probably badly placed than me in a time zone way. So we are mighty conscious about the fact that all we can do correctly is use the infrastructure that is in place to be able to participate quickly.
Yeah, well,
100%. Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, well, certainly it's a saving to be able to go and edit or read on GitHub when everybody else in the world is asleep. That's quite a useful asynchronous way to go. I had a question for Sekishan, actually. I'm not sure whether it's on topic or not. Can I share one sec?
Oh, yeah, sure. Let me stop here. Go ahead.
Is that happening? I'm not sharing yet, am I? Share,
no.
try again.
Not yet.
Screen 3. There we go. Share. So, Sekishan, I'm sharing now.
Yeah.
This post, I read this post of yours, and in LinkedIn, and then this guy, Shane DeConnick, responded. I thought both the post and the response I thought were hugely interesting. Do you know this guy? Where does he
I've
fit in there?
interacted with Shane at some forum. virtually, not in person.
Right. Okay. So then I went from reading his response to your post to this thing. AI just need the inverse of human trust. This is very close to something I'm kind of say. I'm trying to say almost the opposite of what he's saying here. So I just wondered. I actually just wondered if you had background on it. I think I'm mostly going to have to stay fairly quiet, Drummond, in the DTG working group. Discussions. I'm sort of an outside observer. I think I have a different position on, not a different, but a different position on relationships. So I think when you've got a trust community, so we've got a little trust community inside the group, of course, and as a newcomer in the group, what I'm doing is I'm trying to work out, okay, what's the relationship between Drummond and Sankashan? What's the relationship between Reza and Steve Vitko? What's the relationship between Jonathan Bellac and Brendan Miller? And I'm reading and I'm drawing in my head relationships. So I have a whole web of private assessments of relationships. I'm drawing all of those relationships. And I feel like that's part of the keys to governance. And in a sense, I'm doing in this group what any newcomer to any trust group has to do, which is to try to work out what are the norms, how does it work, how do I not offend the norms of the group, and the sanction, of course, being exclusion from the group. So the model I'm thinking of, it doesn't have these single relationships. It has actually a whole bunch of actors with private assessment of relationships. And then you can see that they're much more heavily layered. And those private assessments of relationships also, they're not binary on off. And actually I was chatting with Steve Vitko, and I stumbled onto the example of the US-UK relationship. And I just, as I was in the flow of my chat with Steve, I said, in the 1980s under Reagan and Thatcher, the US-UK relationship was strong and getting stronger. And in the 2020s under Trump and Starmer, the US-UK relationship is strong and getting weaker. And all those private assessments have huge impact on governance about what we are all thinking about where power lies in the networks. So I'm off on that. I'm off on that track, which I appreciate is a different track than being able to attach a did and are did to a relationship. Completely different sort of an idea, which is why I'm mostly going to stay quiet and not offend the norms of the group. But I am contemplating whether I might come to the Napa Valley.
Fantastic.
So you would roll, I see it's only just one day. So there's in one day to travel from Australia and then come for a day and then fly home again for 22 hours is unattractive. But you will roll, I assume, from there into the Linux Foundation meeting. Is that right?
Yes, it does. That is the following 2 days. And if you are contemplating it, Joe, interesting enough, I just found out yesterday about another Australian. Maybe you've heard of him, David Christmas. He's the guy behind
I've seen a paper.
The Max browser. Yeah.
Oh,
and
okay.
I only found out about the Max browser in December, I think. Was introduced again. Word was getting out about this, and someone else in the first person community made an introduction. And anyway, the Max browser is a full privacy browser, right? There's no advertising, no tokens, no anything. It's actually connected to a VPN. But he was hugely interested in what we're doing with first person network. And of course, we've always thought this would be, a browser is sort of the a first person or DTG enabled browser, essentially a verifiable trust agent integrated with a browser would be a very powerful tool, right? So anyway, I just found out because he began, then I introduced him to the H2H team that's putting together that conference. And I just got the news yesterday. They invited him as a speaker and he's going to come.
Okay.
So
Christmas, what's his first name?
David Christmas.
David.
Literally his last name
Actually,
is Christmas.
probably I know his name just from just recently scanning the speakers of H2H.
I think
That's why I would have ring a bell. Not because he's an
there you go.
Aussie.
Well, there you go. Interesting enough, just FYI, Glenn Gore, CEO of Affinity, and Adam Lartner, CTO, are both Aussies as well.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So we have a good, strong Aussie contingent.
Yes. Yeah. Our plan to take over the world.
Yes, it's happening.
Proceeds steadily, slow and steady.
Exactly.
As other people wreck their systems, Drummond, we will just rise to the top.
I love it. I do love it. Anyway, so to answer your question, I just found out literally, earlier today that no, yesterday afternoon, excuse me. So Linux Foundation Member Summit is for Linux Foundation members. So and the rule is if you're what's called an associate member, which is that you're your university or nonprofit or something like that, you have a maximum of one person that gets can come. Other higher paying members can have more, but it's still there's an overall limit of 350 folks because that's as big as a Silverado resort is. Typically, they've had in the order of 250 to 300. So there's room there. But what I'd heard up until yesterday was if you're not a Linux Foundation member, so they invite some speakers, but they're fairly tight on non-members that are invited to join. And so therefore it set the expectation. Don't think that if a bunch of folks that come to the H2H Summit the day before could all just come to the to Linux Foundation Member Summit. So we were like, okay, we'll observe that. And then yesterday, Daniela said, oh, actually, the LF team is very interested in this space. As you know, that's one of the whole reasons we're working so closely with LF. And they said, well, actually, if there are folks coming to the conference, to Monday's event that want to come to the LF Member Summit, just tell us. So it was the opposite signal. It was like, okay, there's a high likelihood that if you wanted to come, especially if you're making all that distance, I can almost guarantee you're in.
I could come. Yeah. When I attended the first meeting, the first one after January of this group, it sounded like the price of entry in terms of participating was foundation membership. And I bought something or other. I've just brought up the receipt. It doesn't tell me very much actually about what I bought. A receipt from the Linux Foundation. It's 99 Aussie dollars. So it's no great, or that might be USD. I don't know. But it doesn't actually tell me. The receipt doesn't actually tell me what type of membership I bought.
I didn't even know there is a $99 membership in anything.
Yeah, well, that seemed to be entry level. That was the cheapest I could do it. So I don't know if that gets me on the list or not. I could share screen again and show my bona fides in the receipt. Anyway,
that's fascinating. Well, all I'm saying is, yeah. Go ahead.
I have some sort of association with it.
Well, and you're also, here volunteering at DTG, so I can guarantee you, actually, I can say even on recording, I can get you a comp ticket to the event. Normally there is nominally a charge, and there is, for folks that are not super close to it, there is, there's a charge for the H2H Summit. But for DTG members, they have been very direct with me. I can get you a comp ticket. So okay. Are you on Signal? Are we connected on Signal?
I am. I don't use it terribly much, but I am there somewhere.
If you would, I'm going to give you my connect with me on Signal. I'll put it in. See if that comes out. No. I love the way they do it. It's Drummond.64 is how you can connect with me on Signal. Of course, you can use my phone number, but I love the fact they have names, or what pass for closer to names. So anyway, if you do that, I can share.
I'll try and hit you up then on Signal.
Yeah, sure. Perfect. If you decide to do that. which reminds
I'm
me of a
very
topic.
interested.
Yeah, I'm happy to bring up one more topic that we didn't talk about this morning, but I'm getting prepared to bring up on next week's meeting, and I could preview it with the two of you if you're interested. But before I do that, were there any more questions or ideas following on from this morning's meeting that either of you wanted to go over?
No, I think I've got what I need.
Okay. So next question. Do you want to take a few minutes to go over this brand new subject, which I'm going to say right now is absolutely within our charter? We made sure it was covered under essentially naming and discovery on the decentralized trust graph. But I have not yet. I've been preparing this document, working in particular with Marcus Sabadello, that you know, as a member of it. I don't know if you know how long Marcus and I have worked together. But it's going to introduce a new idea that we actually haven't. We did. The reason I'm ready to do it is I previewed it at the first person workshop and said Marcus and I, presented it. We actually had, among the folks that came, we had 14 different folks that said, I want to present on what we're doing and how it plugs into all this stuff. We were
You've given it a long, mysterious intro, Drummond. So now you're going to have to talk about.
All right.
It.
So I will actually happily. Again, I know this is being recorded. I have no problem because all of this is coming into. Whoa, actually, breaking news on Signal. David Christmas just confirmed he's coming and will stay for the LF Summit. So I'm telling you, Joe, you have and he's
yeah, okay.
saying,
I have a compatriot. Okay.
A compatriot, among others, yes. And by the way, Glenn Gore and Adam Lardner will be there. Of course, they're speaking on that first day. So it's a little bit more enticement. Okay, let me find this. I'm just going to share my screen because it's going to be faster than just have to find the right screen here. Oh, there it is. It's the one I was working right here. All right. Date that. I will share this page. Now, one thing, Sankarshan, you need to promise not to write about this until we have presented it at least next week. Okay. Right. Not that it's anything but the reaction was quite good, and that's why I want to get your two takes on it. Okay, let me hit the share button, and it's right here. All right. This is a proposal for human-friendly naming. It's actually broader even than the D2G. It's basically a naming layer for DIDs, for decentralized identifiers. And I'll just quickly, I can share this. It's a Google Doc right now. I'm happy to share it with you individually, but then I want to, formally share it next week as one of our agenda items. But I'm just going to give you a quick tour. The basic idea, going right down here to, what is an agent name? Is when we created DIDs, there was a very, very conscious decision, a little controversial at the outset in the first year as we did the first spec. But, and just a little bit of background, Marcus Sabadell and I, among others, we had a whole technical committee at Oasis that worked on a pair of protocols. XRI was the identification and resolution protocol, and XDI was the semantic data interchange protocol that we were working on there that correspond now to DIDs and DID resolution. And then, everything that is layer 2 and TrustAS, meaning whether it's DIDCOM or the trust spanning protocol and TrustAS on top of that. We worked on a whole predecessor to that was way too far ahead of its time and way too powerful and all these things. But we did work on it for a very long time. And we had both in XDI, XRI and XDI, names and numbers, right? Numbers were the persistent, and then there was a naming layer for the numbers so that you could cover this point of the triangle, because the Zucos triangle, this is right off the Wikipedia page, basic says you can have two out of any particular identifier scheme or naming scheme can only cover 2 points of the triangle. And with DIDs, we are decentralized and secure. That's the whole point, but therefore they are not human meaningful. And anything human meaningful brings in some degree of centralization. You just, it's an unsolved problem to do it any other way if you want to, especially at global scope. So that's why we didn't tackle that. But the whole idea is, now that we have DIDs, you actually could layer over human meaningful names that resolve to DIDs. And what this document does is say, okay, here's a proposal. We're calling them agent names, and you'll see why. But it's specifically, this has been floating literally for the last 2 years, but it landed here because the problem you're solving is the value of this address, the power of this new address and this or new naming is that it resolves to an agent, and specifically a verifiable trust agent. So as you can see that on the screen. So now, what does it look like? Here is the syntax, the proposed syntax. It looks a lot like an email address, only in reverse.
This is, I think this is natural progression of how you want to name anyway. So, like the protocol that Blue Sky and others are using, and I believe at some point Noster was also toying with it, and it kind of looks the same.
We've been sort of watching other proposals as they've come along, and again, Marks and I have been basically discussing this for the last 2 years, and now we're ready to land it. And the key, besides just making it as simple as possible, is that it has many of the qualities of an email address in that it is designed to enable communications with whatever you're addressing, but it is a URL. Right, because all it does is basically prefix the path with an @ sign. And the idea for this syntax was very simple, which is, hey, this idea of addressing people specifically, once it started at I think it started at Twitter, I'm not sure, but the whole idea of the @ name just kept growing. Right now, we've got them in Slack, we've got them in, just pretty much all of the. Signal has them, right? If you have a group, you hit @ and you can address within the group. So all of those essentially are local @ names. The scope of the name is just that app or that team or whatever it is. And so the aha was to say, oh, wait a minute. What if we just make it a standard? And we prefix that with a domain name, and therefore the machine recognizable part of the syntax is the /@ right? And because of that, it makes it machine recognizable in the same way an email address or a URL is recognizable. But what we thought the cool part is it is recognizable by today's software as a URL, right? So I mean, literally, that's why all of these are, it just is recognized, that's a URL. And so what happens is there are two modes or views of an agent name, which is the plain browser view, right? The dumb view, which is, it resolves to an agent page. Well, an agent page is just a page, right, of whatever you'd want to have there. But in an agent name enabled application, like a personal network manager, the agent name resolves to the DID that resolves to the DID document that can display, connect you to anything. It can show you that agent page, but that agent page can also have basically other services or agent readable data there. And you're connecting to an agent, not just a page, right? And therefore, it's a way to trigger agent-to-agent communications that just starts with an agent name. So That's the
The,
basic idea. Go ahead.
the question that immediately occurs to me, Drummond, if you're Joe Rasmussen and you're managing three personas, so each persona has an agent name, and then those three personas are operating across 30 domains. Can you have 10 domains all resolve onto the one persona?
Okay, so let me just make sure I understand. Yeah, let me want to make sure you understand. So we're starting with three agent names, which an agent name could be, you can register to any domain, right? You can be your own personal domain. You can register in any domain that supports agent names. It resolves to a DID, and you're absolutely right. That's a perfect way to have a persona that you can share, right? You're now sharing it,
Yes.
the agent name and the DID. So let me just finish here. With the idea of agent names is now you can assert that because it is global. It's not locked in a specific system in any context you want. Just like the persona DID, that's the idea in the DTG. A persona DID you can assert anywhere. It doesn't matter what community you're part of. So the only thing the domain name part of it does is make it resolvable. So
yes.
Well, having said that,
my question.
Go ahead. I want to understand your question.
My question was, if I wanted to have a domain DTGWG / Joe Rasmussen.
Yep.
So that's one identifier. And then I've got another identifier, AIMWG / Joe Rasmussen. And I want those to be the same person. I want those two identifiers to resolve onto one DID.
Absolutely, you can do that. Whoever registers the agent name, and an agent name does have to be registered with a domain. It's not like a DID that you can just self-generate, right?
Yes.
But that the power of it is, and this is why Marcus and I are excited. The agent name resolves to the DID, and the DID points wherever so as long as you can control the binding of the agent name to the DID, and if your first reaction is, oh yeah, that's really powerful, but oh my God, what an attack surface! You're absolutely right, right? If I go and register, I happen to either run or have access to dtg.com, right? And I go, whoa, I'm going to register dtg.com @ Joe Rasmussen and start going out there in the world. I'm Joe Rasmussen, right? I have this name there, right? The power is, if you get to the rest of this, and we're going to run out of time to go through it in detail. The power is to actually have it be verifiable, that agent names are verifiable, because when you resolve the DID, there's a protocol for verifying that agent name actually, that the control of that agent name is actually under, that you're interacting with a real, whatever you need to trust that, meaning there's a verifiable credential behind it, at least one.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so therefore you have the same ability to basically prove what you want about the identity behind an agent name as you do behind a DID. The agent name just becomes a simpler way to find the DID, but the whole protocol behind it is about verifiability, which basically means takes phishing as close to off the table as we can. And yes, Joe, just to be clear, since you control what DID an agent name resolves to, you could register 100 agent names that all point to the same DID.
Yeah.
And but the beauty is you can also have, your 3 different agent names that resolve to 3 different DIDs that are personas.
Yes.
And then you control at the verifiable trust agent layer, well, what do you actually share in those personas, right? Are they even connected? With a proper, VTA hosting infrastructure, you can you can literally in one place control all 3 of those personas and what's connected with them, and they can, to the rest of the world, they're entirely separate people.
Yep.
Right. And you can provide a proof of personhood for each one without having to connect them. This is, as you can tell, I get excited about that because it's like, these are really hard problems we've been working on for 30 years. Cool. Any other? I wanted to sort of preview this because again, but we want to bring this in as another, again, spec that that we, DTG spec. It's not yet on the list because this is a newer thing coming. But the reason I bring it up is there was when we presented it last week and said this is a way that it's something, it's a capability that we could introduce pretty soon. There was some of the folks there that are involved with social media said, "Oh, this," and you're exactly right. Actually, I haven't been reading all the chat, but you're exactly right, Sankarshan. It is close to what's being used in the Fediverse or what Blue Sky is using, but it doesn't generalize. It's not a general way that you can literally have a naming layer for DIDs any place, and it can work across all of those things, right? Because it's not tied to any of them. And it's not, to be specific, it's not tied to the decentralized trust graph, meaning agent name you could use for any purpose you want, but is particularly powerful if it resolves to a verifiable trust agent and you get those capabilities. Which leads me to the last point. What folks got excited about was saying, oh, if we could bring this up and have even really simple verifiable trust agents that basically are contact mediators, it becomes an address you can start using on social media immediately as essentially the universal DM, right? It doesn't matter anything else. Your verifiable trust agent can apply your policies for who can reach you via that. But now you can literally publish it any place you want to let people be able to DM you to get directly in touch. That's not tied to that system, right? Well, how can they? What are the rules on on Twitter/X? What are the rules on Blue Sky? What are the rules on whatever? Yeah, that's what I wanted to preview. Okay, now I'm going to read what you put in chat. Oh, you're kidding.
Sankarshan, I put into ChatGPT what is PERDA in Stevenson's fail, but I could just ask you instead of ChatGPT didn't do too well with that question.
It probably hasn't read the book.
It's essentially a way where you can create a number of handles that are unseverable and they link back to an identity that you don't want to disclose in various contexts. And
yeah, okay.
It's not, the idea has been floating around. Stevenson probably wrote it it's probably the last book that he has published at this point. I don't remember if he's published one. But anyway, it's funny to see that it took quite some time to get this to real in a spec and also real eventually.
It's fascinating. I had forgotten that, but I did read Fall, which I don't know, Joe, if you're a Stevenson fan. He happens to be a Seattle resident. So, and you're going to laugh. We had a conversation about it at the workshop because it was in downtown Seattle. And that particular reference came up, exactly what you said, Sankarshan. Someone else had read Fall and brought that same analogy up and said, yeah, this is, that it reminds them of that. And I was standing on the other side of the room and I said, yes. And the actual Fall, it's a, I'm not giving away anything, Joe. It's a, what do I want to say?
I'm too busy reading all these 100-page papers that Steve Vitka sends to me, so I won't be able to read such novels.
No. Yeah, it's very long and it's very obtuse. It's one of the most obtuse of Stevenson's stuff. But in any case, there is an actual fall that takes place in the fall of the year. It's a fall of the main character, which results in him. Yeah. That fall takes place about 4 blocks outside the window of where we were. And I was literally pointing over there going, yeah, that actually took place in Seattle. And folks who had read the book were like, oh, like here. Like I said, yeah, right, 4 blocks over there. He's very specific about where the fall takes place. Yeah, so super cool. That's you're absolutely right, Sankarshan. And of course, Sankarshan's read Fall, all 700 pages. All right.
I see. Again, or Dodge in Hell is part of that. That's the whole title of the novel. Fall or Dodge in Hell.
Yeah,
not 2
and that last-page
novels. One.
That last part is another insider reference to Stevenson's stuff. Anyway, Yeah, you just got to be deep into it. So
All right.
anyway, I just
I
wanted
will
to
have to wrap up today, prominently. Thank you so much
absolutely
for the sharing the agent naming spec. I'll wait for the public sharing before I discuss this.
fantastic. Yeah. I'm going to introduce it next week, but then I'm hoping we once we have the spec template, we can get a spec out there pretty quickly. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. And
Cool. All right.
anything else anyone wants to bring up today?
I'll hit you up on Signal.
Yes, please do that. And we'll follow up there. And meanwhile, go Seahawks.
Cool. All right.
All
Thanks,
right.
Tom.
Thanks, Joe.
See you. Bye-bye.